गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। चिन्मयं व्यापि यत्सर्वं त्रैलोक्यं सचराचरं तत्परं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। वक्रतुण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। भवानी शङ्करौ वन्दे श्रद्धा विश्वासरूपिणौ याभ्यां विना न पश्यन्ति सिद्धाः स्वान्तस्थमीश्वरम्। जगन्नायक जगदाधार जगन्नायक जगदाधार जगन्नायक जगदाधार विश्वभासक विश्वाधार विश्वभासक विश्वाधार जगन्नायक जगदाधार विश्वभासक विश्वाधार शक्तिदायक सच्चिदाकार शक्तिदायक सच्चिदाकार प्रमाकारक ब्रह्माकार प्रमाकारक ब्रह्माकार जगन्नायक जगदाधार जगन्नायक जगदाधार विश्वभासक विश्वाधार प्रमाकारक ब्रह्माकार मोक्षदायक हे निर्विकार मोक्षदायक है निर्विकार मोक्ष विश्वभासक विश्वाधार जगन्नायक जगदाधार जगन्नायक जगदाधार जगदाधार सर्वविद्या स्वरूपाय लक्ष्मी संश्लिष्ट वक्षसे मधुपासन लक्ष्याय हयग्रीवाय मंगलम् शंखचक्र महामुद्रा पुस्तकाढ्यं चतुर्भुजम् सम्पूर्णचन्द्रसङ्काशम् हयग्रीवमुपास्महे ज्ञानानन्दमयं रामम् निर्मलस्फटिकाकृतिम् आधारं तत्त्वविद्यानाम् हयग्रीवायितं नुमः हयग्रीवायितं नुमः शङ्कराचार्यनभावतारम् विश्वेश्वरं विश्वगुरुं प्रणम्य वेदान्तशास्त्र श्रवणालसानां बोधाय कुर्वे किमपि प्रबन्धम् बोधाय कुर्वे किमपि प्रबन्धम् श्रीमद्हयग्रीव पदारविन्द कारुण्यमारन्द रसप्रसङ्गा मन्दाशयोद्धारण बद्धबुद्धिः सिद्धान्तबिन्दुं विपुलीकरोमि सिद्धान्तबिन्दुं विपुलीकरोमि without the projection of the value, almost all, or in other words, 99% of the thoughts are plain, boring and stale or platitudinous. It is only the projection of the value If you and I attribute the value to these thoughts, then alone these thoughts will not be just plain, will not be boring, will not be stale. Otherwise, almost all the thoughts are like that. If we don't give any value to them, they do not become charming, they do not become interesting, they do not become juicy, they do not appear flowering. So it is our giving of value. When we give value to them, they become very absorbing, engrossing. Otherwise, they are simply boring. We don't find any juice in them. And whenever we get disenchanted by these thoughts, disillusioned or disappointed by these thoughts, it diminishes their attraction by withdrawal of our interest in them. Whenever we are disenchanted, automatically we withdraw our interest in them. It is said that whenever we try to make our focus of the mind sharp and then start observing the inward process of thoughts or thinking, then slowly we will come to understand that these thoughts, if sincerely attempted through the process of contemplation and meditation, can be relinquished at much earlier stage, at the time of their emergence and formation. But it needs a very sharp focus and a contemplative meditation. And when we develop this continuous focus and added to that, we relinquish the entertainment value of these thoughts, they will slowly disappear as recognizable forms. Only when there is this entertainment value, then they become prominent in us, in our mind, and they are recognized, very prominently recognized. We give too much of importance to them. If because of this sharp focus, when we slowly relinquish the entertainment value, then they slowly disappear as recognizable forms and subside to a state where there will be only a transitory urge to think, not a compelling force, not a binding force, but only a transitory urge to think. At this stage, because of our entertainment value that we give to these thoughts, we are compelled to think, forced to think. Almost all the while we are ending up thinking. In addition to this, if we are able to refuse the urge to think or the gratification of the impulse to think, by doing so, it becomes amazingly apparent that one thinks only as a consequence of one's desire to do so. When we desire to do so, then we get into the process of thinking. But this we will discover only when we go deep into ourselves. So our thinking is actually dependent upon our intention, our desire to think. So then we keep on thinking. But when we do this contemplation and meditation, slowly we come to understand that these thoughts do not have original value by themselves. They are only having imaginary value, entertainment value. That is only a contribution from our side. We gave them that value, which is again imaginary, not real, not factual. So because of this imaginary value, we end up with more imaginations. More and more images enter our mind. So if we are able to keenly observe and relinquish these impulses and these urges, then we can see that if we strongly desire, then only we get into this process of thinking. And moreover, we also come to understand that we are not a victim of the mind, that we are helplessly dragged into the mental process of thinking. Then we will understand that we are not a victim of the mind, but we are the source of all thinking. When we know that we are the source of all thinking, then we will have a greater freedom, that we are not under the binding force of thinking, but rather thinking itself depends upon us because we are the source. Only by the virtue of our intention and desire, the thinking process gathers momentum. Too much of force. So many intentions and desires in so many years and so many words. This much of force is gathered by this thinking process. And in addition to this, we also think because there is a return which we get because of the thinking. For the ego, whatever thought it might be, if it goes on thinking, there is a secret satisfaction which the ego derives. Even the thought of sorrow, misery, hurt, insult, whatever it is, we tend to repeat them, we tend to involve in the process because the ego derives the gratification, which we are also not aware, unless and until we keenly observe. That is why many people love to talk about their miserable experiences, sad feelings, and they go on talking, and they have so much of interest in this. Why? Because the ego derives the satisfaction. Not only in good thoughts, of course it derives, which we can know it, but even in these thoughts also it derives that satisfaction. That is why it involves in thinking. The ego becomes more strong, more energized, more fed with a lot of ingredients. So it loves to get into that process of thinking. So only when we deeply understand this, we can renounce that ego's gratification to derive the pleasure in thinking. Once that is surrendered to God, once that is relinquished with correct understanding, then slowly we start seeing a distance between the thought and the one who is the onlooker of the thought, the observer of the thought, the one who is aware of the thought. Earlier we did not have any opportunity to even feel for a moment that there is a knower of the thought. There is somebody who is an observer of the thought. So that observer, that knower, that onlooker is connected with the silent field of consciousness, of awareness, which can be understood by us, and we can thereafter shift our identity from the compulsive thinker to the silent onlooker. Now we are a compulsive thinker. So many things compel us to think. From within, from without. So we are helplessly forced from inside, from outside. Various things outside influence our thinking, and so many compiled things inside, accumulated things inside influence our thinking. When we understand that there is this silent field of conscious awareness, then we will know that we are not under the impact of the outside compulsions or inside compulsion, because we are much more deeper than this. The light of awareness, where there is no darkness of ignorance, so that we are made to think mechanically. So this light of awareness will become our identity, and we lose our identification with this ego. But initially, why at all we got into this identification? Then it is all because Daivatma Shaktim Swagunaihi Nigudha. It is all because of the power of the God, which is Maya, which is having the gunas, the qualities, the sattva, the rajas, the tamas. So this is called by many names. One is Maya, another one is Avidya, third one is Prakriti, another one is Shakti, another one is Ajnanam, another one is Amrutam. So all these are various names of this inexplicable power of God, which only has created all these instruments of thinking, the internal organ or Antakarana. And the Mayadipati is none other than Ishvara. So, this Maya, which is not an abhava padartha, because there are so many things that are created out of it. So it is a bhava padartha, it is not an absence of something, or it is not a negation, but it is a presence. Of course, it is indeterminable, it is inexplicable, but it is the power of God. So that is why it creates so many things. It veils the consciousness, it creates so many things. Maya cha, avidya cha, swayameva bhavataha. From the Veda, Maya, or we call it as avidya, came into existence by themselves. By themselves they came into existence. That is the glory of the power of God. And this Maya is anadi, meaning beginningless, because the time and events and so many other things came as byproducts of the Maya. When there are no instruments to recognize the events that may happen, the thoughts that may be thought, where is the question of time? So, in that non-dual awareness, there is nothing else other than it. So, there is no question of anything else happening anywhere. So, there is no other happening. Only from the Maya onward, things started happening. So, whenever we say we have to make it happen, so it is all in Maya only we can make it happen. So, avidya is anadi, timeless. But at the same time, it is not endless, it ends. It is not avinashi, it ends. Because of the knowledge of Brahman, it will end. Paramarthika and Vyavaharika are the two forms of the Atma. Paramarthika form meaning it is only Satchidananda Rupa. So when it is Satchidananda remaining only as Satchidananda, and when it is not in Ajnana, that is called as Kevala Satchidananda. When there is no question of any Ajnana near it, Ajnana around it, Ajnana protected on it, it is Kevala Satchidananda. That is Paramarthika Rupa of the Atma. Another one is Vyavaharika Rupa, whenever there is association of ajnana, ignorance, then that is transactional rupa of the Atma. When there is avrita of ajnana, when there is association of ajnana, when there is presence of ajnana, then it is vyavaharika. And it is because of this, in the vyavaharika, because of the ajnana and abhyasa, we say, I don't know. And because of ahankara, we say, I have done this, I have done that, I am responsible for this, and I know this, I know that. All these kinds of bhavanas are happening in us. And there are so many kinds of bhavanas. Depending upon the degree of adhyasa and the sequence in which the adhyasa happens, we have degrees of identification or intensity of love. On certain things we have more love, on certain things we have less love than those upon whom we have more love in comparison. On all the things we don't have equal love. It depends upon the levels of adhyasa and the sequence in which the superimposition has happened. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad Bhashya Vartika, Sri Sureshwaracharya says this, which is cited here by Madhusudana Saraswati. Vitta putra priyaha putra pindaha pindastadhendriyam indriyebhyah प्रियः प्राणः प्राणात् आत्मा परः प्रियः वित्तात् पुत्रः प्रियः. Who doesn't have like and intense like and also love towards the wealth, towards the money? Yes, everybody needs it, wants it, they have love for it because it facilitates so many things. So naturally, but there is so much of love, so much of intense liking for the money. But is that the ultimate? Do people have the greatest liking only for money? But Sureshwaracharya says no, not at all. When it is the question of the dearest son and money, they are ready to lose the money for the sake of their son. Suppose the situation arises, you want your son or you want money. Because of the intense liking, more liking for the son, they will let go of the money. So then there is great liking for the children, for the son. But is that the ultimate? Is that the greatest amount of liking? Yeah, naturally having love for children, liking for children is normal and then accepted. Is that the dearest, and is there not anything dearest than that? Sureshwara says no. One's own body is more dear than the son's body. Because even without them, one continues to live, one continues to survive. How much ever dear might be others' bodies, even after they go, still we continue to live. How much ever we weep, how much ever we feel the loss, we may be feeling, but we will continue all other dealings. Meaning what? Not that there is no love for others and others' bodies, but it is there. But that is not the dearest. Our body is more dearest than their bodies. No doubt, if they are well, we will be happy. If they are not well, we will be unhappy. But still, there is a possibility where we can still continue to survive without all of that. Even though we may say that we can't survive, but we will. Because this is more dearest. And is body the dearest? Even body, if it is thin also, stout also, doesn't matter. But the sense organs must be properly conditioned. Sense organs are more dearest. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin. People say body is thin, doesn't matter. You are too heavy, doesn't matter. As long as I can eat whatever I want, taste whatever I can taste, see whatever I can see, hear what all I want to hear and don't want to hear, doesn't matter. Sense organs are more dear than the body. The body portion also I can forgo if for the sake of saving the senses. If somebody says, do you want to lose your finger or your eyes? Finger! You can't wear ring. Who wants? Otherwise I will have to wear suffering without eyes. Doesn't matter. अरे उसका आपका dearest body अरे comparison में if I have the choice only choice I have to choose the eyes or finger छोड़ो. Well, because sense organs are more dear. Definitely dear than one's own body. Definitely dearer than other bodies. Definitely dearer than money. That's why for the sake of gaining health we can forgo money. Curing disease, forgo money. Take loan, sell things. Doesn't matter. Body has to survive. Money is good. For the sake of accumulation of money, I might have spoiled the health. But again, for the sake of curing the spoiled health, I will lose the money. Very funny. But other people, what can we do? We tried our best. They are not that. They are not that. We can't. Right? Now, sense organs are more dear. Are sense organs the dearest? No. Even if sense organs are not functioning properly, mind should be happy. That's why even a deaf fellow wants to be happy, blind fellow also wants to be happy. Doesn't matter if eye is not there are so many institutes to train, deaf also so many instruments we can keep. Doesn't matter. Limping, without limp, good. I should be happy. Mind should be happy. Mind is more dearer. So mind is more dearer than sense organs, than body, than other bodies, than money. How much of money we can spend for the sake of gaining few moments of peace? That is why all these people who charge a lot of money for the sake of 5 minutes meditation, 2 hours workshop, people are getting it. Doesn't matter because mind peace. Mind is more dearer. And understanding this, many people are making business out of this. Which is dearest to money or mind? Mind. Is mind the dearest? No. More dearest than that is ego. We will never mind the mind for the sake of ego. Oh, that is more important. So like that if you go on seeing, one is more dearer than the other because of the sequence in which the adhyasa happened, and because of the proximity we have more intense liking, because of little distance and intervening, something is intervening in between, we have lesser liking. Ego is closest to us. As a jiva, as a chidabhasa, identified with internal organ, jiva, naturally ego is very closer to us. Because it only has got the thought, I am, thinker, I am, doer, I am, enjoyer, but knowledge. And yet, so, this is what is said here. One is dearer than the other. And finally, the ego becomes the most loved. So everybody loves I. Everyone loves their I-ness. And that is why yesterday also we saw everyone wants I to be happy. I want happiness. I love my own I-ness because I want happiness. And deep inside, what I want happiness. Everybody likes themselves, their own self, because actually that is the source of all happiness. I want to be happy at any cost. Tena anyonya adhyasa chit achit grandhi rupa adhyasa. So because of the mutual superimposition, the consciousness and the inner, the self and the not self, become bound together and appear as one inseparable whole. And it is also said in the Atma, first avidya adhyasa, then ahankara adhyasa, then mind mano adhyasa, then indriya adhyasa, then deha dharmas, etc., etc., etc. Like that, the adhyasa happened one after another superimposition. That is the reason why the ahankara adhyasa has become more dearer to us. The ahankara has become more dearer to us. I have to live, I have to survive, and I have to live and survive. That is most important thing. For that sake, I can lose anything. Doesn't matter. So I is more important. And then slowly that I is there, then the mind, and then slowly indriyas, and then body, then other body, then money, like that. And then so many other things. Even though one says that one has great attachment for one's relatives, but that is not greater than oneself. So like that, if you go on observing, finally we come down to this ahankara. Even with this ahankara, something we have to know, that is ahankara adhyasa and mamakara adhyasa. Ahankara adhyasa, this is I. This is I. This is I. Mamakara adhyasa, this is mine. And even in these adhyasas are also of two types, inner, outer, with reference to the body, with reference to the upadhi. Because of the upadhi veda, when something is said inner and something is said outer. Inner Chaitanya, outer Chaitanya, because of the body. Inner Chaitanya is Pratyekatma, outer Chaitanya is Brahman. So, internal organ, etc. are superimposed on the Atma. Money, property, relatives, sons, partners, everybody else is superimposed or adhyasa in Brahman. So, antakarana, indriya, sharira, manasa dharmas, in all these things, there is ahankara and mamakara adhyasas which are happening. But in money, property, and various other things, only mamakara adhyasa happens. So the adhyasa between anatma and the atma is ahankara adhyasa. Adhyasa between oneself and outer objects is mamakara adhyasa. I and various other objects, mamakara adhyasa. Atma and anatma, ahankara adhyasa. Somebody said very interestingly, in a very beautiful, simple manner, Adi Kani Dani Nida, Adi Ane Drushti Adhyasa. Adi Kani Dani Nida. That which it is not, on that there is a thought that is it. Adi Kani Dani Nida, Adi Ane Drushti Adhyasa. That is not that, but on that there is a thought that is that. That is what it is, adhyasa. And another scholar gave a very close definition of Brahma to adhyasa, even though they are different. Adi leni dani meeda, adi unnatlu anubhavam Brahma. On that upon which it is not, we get an experience that it is there. Snake is not on the rope, but we get an experience that it is there. Adi leni dani meeda, adi unnatlu anubhavam Brahma. It is not there on that. But our experience says it is there. Just because our experience says, is it there? It need not be. That is why we have to be very watchful about these things. The adhyasa and the brahma. The antahakarana, which has its adhyasa in Atma, creates a brahma, delusion that there are Atma dharmas in it. So because of the antakarana adhyasa, a delusion is created there that there are Atma dharmas in it. And there are its dharmas in the Atma. Yayedam nirmamo vibhu. Bhagavan Vyasa in the Bhagavata also says Ishvara becomes the creator of the world only due to avidya, meaning due to maya. Prapancha adhisthana and jagatkarta. He becomes the jagatkarta because of his own inexplicable power called as maya. And it is said by one of the great masters in the traditional system of Advaitic philosophy that consciousness as such is not superimposed on the mind, intellect, memory, ego, equipment. Only the quality and the sentience is superimposed. So that is why even when the ego is negated, consciousness still remains there as such. Only the false notion that ego is sentient by itself, internal organ was sentient by itself, that vanishes. And we will come to know that internal organ was not by itself sentient, it depended upon the consciousness for its sentiency. It was not independently alive by itself, but it was dependent upon consciousness. That is realized when the ego is negated. And Vedantically, one master interprets superimposition means the appearance of one thing in another thing. It is his way of interpreting. The appearance of one thing in another thing. There are various kinds of interpretations. And it is also said in one of the nice analysis, because today we will see towards the end probably, that Sureshwaracharya observes various analytical points about the Jiva Ishvara Sambandha and says it is not only one way through which we can arrive at the pure consciousness. There are few ways. And all those ways, if they are leading us to pure consciousness in the end, whichever way they may take us to analysis, they are all valid and they are all accepted. Like to come to one place, there may be so many routes. It need not be only one route, so many ways. So we can reach there. So it is said here, Satya Mithya Vastu Sambheda Avabhasaha Adhyasaha iti eva Siddhanta Lakshanam. Satyanurtena Vidunivritya iti Bhashavachana. Combining both, it is said, the appearance of the real and the unreal in combination. Real and unreal in the combination. And it is said, this is one way of interpretation. Ignorance, or in other words it is called as nescience, is the cause of all the manifestation. It is the karana, Maya is the cause, that nescience is the cause, that ignorance is the cause. But by itself it is one and beginningless. The Mula Ajnana is one and beginningless. Anada. Because beginning began in it. the beginning of so many things began in it. That is why it is beginningless. For our mind, beginning means time. And time cannot be perceived unless there are events happening, one after another. So for events to happen, there must be something to make it happen, and that must be prior to time. Even logically, we will understand it must be prior to time, it is prior to time. So there is nescience. Initially when it came out, it is one and beginningless. And because each interpretation will open up something in our intellect and take us more closer to the understanding. You can't say only one way of thinking of Advaita Vedanta is correct. Like few ways of thinking are there. All are valid, according to Sureshwara. Now we are seeing one of those ways. It satisfies the quest of the intellect. So, ignorance is there, nescience is there, it has manifested. It is one and beginningless. And it is the karana for ego, mind, intellect, memory, buddhi, manas, chitta, ahankara. That antakarana, it is the cause. These are all effects of the cause. And these also, initially in the beginning. Now this provides a beautiful answer for many people who have questions. Initially, in the beginning, once the Ishvara with his Maya, because Maya has manifested, and then it is one and beginningless, and because it is the karana of so many karyas, effects, so all these effects have been manifested. They are also those effects which are manifested initially, first time, they are called as beginningless. Even these effects, they are beginningless, internal organs, antakaranas. Because of Maya, it just manifested them. They just manifested all of them. And once they are manifested, initially, mind is there, intellect is there, memory is there, ego is there, with some given things in it. Afterwards, then what happened? Continuity from one to another, next is based upon whatever one has thought by utilizing that initial internal organ. Initial internal organ is given by Maya, but freedom is there to think. Mind is given to think, intellect is given to discriminate, ego is given to say I am, memory is given to store everything, what is necessary, unnecessary, everything. So this is given. Afterwards, how the one who is getting reflected in the internal organ is using it by identification with the internal organ. Then started so many other samskaras and so many other vasanas. Each birth after birth, accumulation more. Like that it started off. It satisfied the intellectual quest of few people. Because all antakaranas have been created by Maya. What was there in the beginning in these antakaranas? That quest is answered here by this one master who thought that how to silence his intellect. So there was that initial internal organ from Maya only, Tofa, Lelo. Like that, whenever the son-in-law wants to start a business, the initial capital is given by father-in-law. That initial, after that, he uses that in business and earns more money, and then more money, then expand business, then more industries, then more companies. Then father-in-law tells to everybody, I only gave him all that. All that meaning, all that came from that which was first. Of course, son-in-law tells, oh, I can't deny that my father-in-law did not give, he gave. But after that, it is my making, my making. I could have spoiled it by investing it in shares or in club and playing cards or various other horse races. But I know what I did with that. And then I gifted to my father-in-law 10 times more than that. So, what one does with that capital is again comes from freedom and choice. Afterwards, it is not the control of father-in-law. That is all it is. That is how our Maya mother-in-law gave these internal organs. and initially certain capital is given. Afterwards, how you develop, whether you develop or don't develop or underdevelop or become a loser and then become a devadas or become a very great rich person, it's all your choice. Freedom is given. Once the father-in-law gives daughter in marriage to son-in-law, it is all his choice how to deal with daughter. Then he need not go ask father-in-law, should I hold the hand, should I kiss her, should I take her outside? It is his choice. Of course, as permissible in the law, you have to do it. Okay. So that is how it is. Similarly, internal organ दे दिए, माया दे दिया, चलो ले लो. Initially ऐसा दे दिए, चलो. You purchase a car. That is all product produced by somebody, advertised, marketed, and then rated, quoted, cited, and then it is given to you. You purchase it initially. बाद में आपकी मर्जी. The company will not interfere with you. Only whenever you take it for servicing those people, whether you really need it or not, they will check the computer and then they will say last time कितना charge किया, उससे कम मत डालना, उससे ज़्यादा डालना. That is their idea. Whether it is required or not, because you don't know, you give it to servicing and you come away. Here, that is all it is. Afterward, the bill will come greater than earlier, because they immediately say, "Pahla kitna tha." That's all. It is their understanding, the people who manage all that. They will understand, they understand better. So that is how it is. So vehicle is given, afterward you use it, it's your choice. Your choice is to dress, you go and then buy. Afterward, do you think the shopkeeper says, "Wait, who are you using my dresser? Is this the right way to use the dresser?" अरे भाई दे दिया आपको, ले लो जाओ. You give a gift to somebody. After you give the gift, still you ask, "Is it still there? Are you thinking of me whenever you are using?" What you do with it, it is your choice. Freedom, by. This is what people say. Oh, God has given mind, then why He did not keep it pure? He didn't want that bondage. He said, freedom use karo. If you want to get into bondage, what will you do? What He will do? He said, take it and then enjoy. Either you reach up or go down. Both available. Choice is yours. बीच में छोड़ दिया आपको. जाओ, इधर जाने वाला. घूमो. That is how it is. So, all that is important is to stop that stupid mind from obstructing the knowledge from entering within. That is why even these great masters, they really put forth a lot of efforts to give various pointers, because each mind is unique. You can't use same methodology to all the minds. You don't know what technique clicks to which mind. So they keep on giving options. And if it clicks, khatam, chhod do. The main purpose is to silence the mind. Silence, chodo, chalo. Now stop this analysis, now contemplate, now meditate, now go deep into yourself. Enough. That is more important. A man went to a psychiatrist. Sir, doctor sir, psychiatrist sir, please help me. Please, I am really in trouble. I can't remember what happened 10 years ago. I said, I also can't. No, I can't remember what happened 1 year ago. I can't remember what happened 1 day ago. I am unable to remember, so it is becoming a tough thing for me to keep my job intact, to keep my relationships with family intact. I am facing a lot of problems everywhere. Please help me. And the psychiatrist said, okay, sit down. Since when you are having this problem? He said, since when you are having this problem? That man says, what problem? If he says, what problem? What can he deal now? For psychiatrist to start his session, the first point necessary is that there is a problem. That has to be accepted not only by psychiatrist but by that fellow also. Then only it can start. If he says, what problem? Then he asks the psychiatrist, why did you come to me? Why did I come to you? Then he said, now I understand how serious the problem is. That is why he understood, why did you come to me? He said. So like that, we are also, because of this adhyasa, we don't know what we are doing only. We think whatever we are doing is right. That is why these masters come and say that this is what we have to do. Otherwise, because of the ego, because of the mind, because of the mood, so how you behave, there was one person who got into a bus, city bus. It was so full crowded, maybe that office time, fully crowded. And he got into the bus and saw all people are there and he has no seat and no place even to stand comfortably. So he said, oh, all kinds of animals are there in the bus. He said, all kinds of animals are there in the bus. And one of the passengers said, yes, only one donkey was lacking. Now it is fulfilled. So he became a donkey by commenting upon them. So we don't know how our mind works also. We have to be very careful. What is proper, what is improper, we need to know. For that reason, we have to get out of that adhyasa, superimposition with the help of jnana. One sales manager employed a sales agent and said, you have to drive this point in, go to the houses and then drive the point in that they need this product. So he went there and after one day he had to report in the evening. He reported. Then the manager asked the sales agent, did you get any orders? He has to sell, no, you have to get orders. Did you get any orders? Yes sir, 2 orders. Wow, great! What are they? One is to stay out, another one is to get out. This is the order that he got. Because he tried to drive the point in and went to the home, he said, stay out, get out. That was the order. So, if we don't know how to utilize our internal organ, we will get such orders from the world and from our own inside also we will get such orders. Now, getting back to Siddhanta Bindu. Siddhanta Bindu, point number 66. Evam adhyase siddhe ekasya api atmanah jiveshwaradi vyavastha manameyadi pratikarma vyavastha cha upapadyate. Here Madhusudana Saraswati says, superimposition having been thus established, distinctions such as Jiva and Ishvara, even though there is nothing but oneself as the only reality, become logically capable of being defended, capable of being maintained, capable of being held. In other words, logically tenable that Jiva and Ishvara are there because of the superimposition. One is called as Jiva, another one is called as Ishvara. So this is logically understood. Then he says, Tadhahi Ajnana Upahita Atma Ajnana Tadatmya Apanna Swachidabhasa Aviveka Antaryami Sakshi Jagatkaranam Ishvaraha Iti cha Kathyate. Tadhahi Ajnana Upahitaha called as Ajnana is there, is not discriminated from its own reflection in nescience. See, its own reflection is there in the Ajnana, in the nescience. It is not discriminated from it. So, then it is said, it has become identified with the nescience. So, it is therefore called as or described as inner controller, witness, the cause of the universe, and the Ishvara. Then it is said, Buddhi Upahitascha Tat Tadatmya Apanna Swachidabhasa said this: because of non-discrimination from its own reflection in the intellect, pure consciousness has got reflected in the intellect. Because of the non-discrimination from its own reflection in the intellect, which has become identified with the intellect, the reflection in the intellect has become identified in the intellect. So the same self is known as Jiva, agent, karta, bhokta, enjoyer, jnata or pramata, knower. So the same is known as Jiva, agent, enjoyer and knower. This is the view of Vartikakara Sureshwaracharya. Meaning what? The same pure consciousness. One has upadhi of ajnana, and it is having the upadhi of ajnana and getting reflected in it, and that is here called as Ishvara, Jagatkarana, Sakshi, Antaryami. Another is again pure consciousness getting reflected in the product of Maya, that is Buddhi or Antakarana. So, and then it is identified with the Antakarana. So that is here called as, what is identified with the Antakarana is called as pure consciousness reflected in the Antakarana, identified with Antakarana. Here is only word intellect is used by Sureshwara, but Buddhi is called as Jiva, called as Karta, called as Bhokta, called as Paramata. That is what you and I think. I am the knower, I am the experiencer, I am the enjoyer, I am the doer. I am the one who is transmigrating, I am the one who is Jiva, all that is that. So this is how, even though originally, really, truthfully, it is only one consciousness, because of their association with the Maya at the totality level, or the byproducts of the Maya at the individuality level, they are called either as Ishvara or as Jiva. The psychology lecturer entered the classroom and said, today I will give lecture on liars. The liars. And he said, but the important prerequisite is to answer the question. He said, how many of you have read the 15th chapter in the book on psychology? How many of you have read the 15th chapter? So almost all the students raised their hands. And then the psychology professor said, correct, this is the right atmosphere for me to talk on this topic, because there is no 15th chapter. So you wanted to give a lecture on liars, he said 15th chapter, they all raised their hand. Now this is the right time for me to start talking. There were a group of women who were very busily discussing something, vigorously discussing something. So just then Usha entered. Usha came there, and they were, arguing, and then so many, and one day everybody started claiming, and I, and then no, and all that, not you, not going on. So the Usha came and then asked, what is happening? What is happening? So much of culture is there. What is this? They said, see, we had a competition. We have collected 10,000 rupees as the gift for today. But this will be gifted to the one who tells the greatest lie. The greatest lie. So that is why we have already conducted the competition and we are going on. Where finally each one is claiming that who is great and all. And this lady Usha says, my God, you are conducting competition or telling lies. Telling lies is very bad according to Dharma Shastras. Nobody will appreciate it. You will get papa. It is very bad. In my whole life, I have never told a single lie. The moment they heard, all of them together in one voice said, you take 10,000. You deserve 10,000. So, telling lies outside is one thing, living in lies is another thing. Our own living as the Jiva, as the one who is identified with the mind, intellect, memory, ego, and claiming oneself to be one with Ahankara, I, with the truer attributes of Pramada, Jnata, Bhokta, Karta, all this, that itself is a lie, that itself is not true. Because this jiva undergoes so many modifications, thinking every time that it is real. Like the teacher was talking about the greatness of the strokes of a painter or an artist who draws pictures. The teacher said, see this is a smiling face, and see, this is a frowning face. With one stroke of his brush, with one stroke, the artist can change the smiling face into the frowning face. One stroke. And the student got up and said, teacher, my mother also with one stroke changes. One stroke she also changes my smiling face into frowning face. Not only mine, my dad's also. One stroke she changes. Not only artist, my mother also. So whatever it is, like that we have got so many strokes in life. We keep on getting strokes after strokes from people, free contributions they give. Well, whether we want it or not, they keep giving these contributions to us. Somehow we have to pull on. So the best way is to disidentify with this stroke receiver, experiencer, and then move away from that compulsive thinking and go deep into oneself at the level of the conscious awareness. So continuing a little bit of elaboration. Ishvara and Jiva are the reflections of the pure consciousness, that is Brahman in Avidya and intellect respectively. He further holds that reflection, Sureshwara further says reflection is indeterminable. And Ishvara, although is indeterminable, is falsely identified with the consciousness that serves as the original Bimba and is viewed as the creator of the universe. Jiva too also is indeterminable, is falsely identified with the pure consciousness that serves as the original and viewed as the agent or enjoyer. This theory, which is given by Sureshwara, Madhusudana says this is Abhasavada. The primary meanings of both the terms are indeterminable when they said that Jiva and Ishvara, and they must be discarded. Then the terms totally abandon their primary sense, and secondary signification is accepted. The secondarily signify, these two words secondarily signify with their secondary meaning the pure consciousness. So the prime senses are falsely identified. Secondary signification is important. So here with the Jahal Lakshana, with the secondary signification, Sureshwara, according to Madhusudana, imparts the teaching that Jiva and Ishvara doesn't mean the one who is bound and one who is with the Maya there, but they both mean actually pure consciousness. Pure consciousness. Then, analyzing about a few other things. Primary meaning of the word has to abandon totally. In the words tat and thou, tat and tvam, and as well as in Brahman and Aham, Aham Brahmasmi, the primary meanings have to be removed, and the secondary meaning here is pure consciousness, which is the basis for the both. If the basis for the both is accepted, then one will experience the oneness of Brahman and Atman. Oneness of Tvam, Thou, and then Tat, That. And then Madhusudana Saraswati ji later on says, Ayameva hi no anartho yat samsara atma darshanam iti. See, he again cites one beautiful statement from Sureshwara, and he says, this alone is our bondage, that we look upon ourselves as a transmigratory entity. Sureshwara Acharya says, this alone is our bondage. What is our bondage? Our view about ourselves. That we look upon ourselves as transmigratory entity. We think that we are transmigratory and we are transmigratory. How simple is it? As long as we continue to think that we are the Jiva who is transmigrating from one body to another body, taking along with it all the vasanas and samskaras, and then the subtle form of subtle body, which is the internal organ. It goes on. So we will continue to go on. But the day when we understand with the dawning of the knowledge that we are not the entity which transmigrates, we are that which is Pratyagatma, which illumines, which lends the power for the internal organ to transmigrate, but it never moves, it remains there. So the day when we understand, we come out of that transmigration. So he makes it look so simple that we are transmigrating because we think that we are transmigrating. If we stop thinking like that, if we start thinking that we are the one who is unmoving, unchanging, and the witness of all pervading, then naturally we will get into it. It is said here, Tena Shuddha Chaitanyasya Avasah Eva Bandhaha Tan Nivrittischa Mokshaha Iti Na Kinchit Asamanjasam. Therefore, the reflection of pure consciousness is itself the bondage. The reflection of pure consciousness in all these things is itself the bondage. And its cessation is liberation. There is nothing inconsistent in this according to Madhusudana. See, the pure consciousness is reflected. And that reflection itself, because it is associated with Ajnana, thinks that itself is it. That is all. That itself is bondage. The moment the reflected image of the sun or the moon knows that in the pond or in the mirror, I am only a reflection. My original Bimba is that. I am, this is not the reality. I am that is the reality. The moment it looks at that, this goes and that remains. The reflection looking at the original may be called as gaining knowledge of one's own true self. But after gaining, will it remain as reflection? While gaining, the reflection has to merge into it, or reflection will cease to remain as a reflection anymore, once it knows that it is the Bimba. So finally, to take us there, this pointer is very valid. Identification of the jiva with the reflection of consciousness and the intellect, which is due to ignorance, is itself bondage. There is no other bondage. So that is bondage. So the cessation of this identification is liberation. So all this is connected with Abhasamara. And then Madhusudana Saraswati ji takes us into Pratibimbavada, theory of reflection. Abhasa, semblance. Pratibimba, reflection. So, to arrive at the identity of these two, one part, namely pure consciousness, is to be retained, another part, namely reflecting media and reflections, is to be abandoned. Reflecting media, Antakarana and Ajnana. Reflections in the Ajnana, in the Antakarana. Once they are all abandoned, what remains is pure consciousness. Then he says, the view of the author of Vivarana is that pure consciousness limited by nescience is Ishvara and is the original which alone gets reflected later on. So, pure consciousness limited by ignorance is Ishvara and is the original according to author of Vivarana. Then, pure consciousness reflected in nescience limited by internal organ and its samskaras. See, pure consciousness reflected in internal organ, which is again, of course, limited by ignorance, byproduct of ignorance, along with its samskaras. And that is called as jiva. Here he adds some samskaras and all that. Author of Vivarana. Ajnana upahita bimba chaitanyam Ishvaraha antakarana tat samskara avachinna ajnana pratibimbata chaitanyam jiva iti Vivaranakaraha. This is one interpretation. But finally both of them say that also is consciousness which is getting reflected in the antakarana, and then along with the samskaras which is called as jiva, this also is consciousness which is getting reflected or which is getting associated with the ajnana. Then it is said, the view of the author of Samkshepa Saririka, Ajnana Pratibimbitam Chaitanyam Ishvaraha, Buddhi Pratibimbitam Chaitanyam Jivaha. Another interpretation. Author of Samkshepa Saririka says, the pure consciousness reflected in Nescience is Ishvara. Pure consciousness reflected in the intellect is Jiva. Much more simpler. Whatever is reflected in Buddhi is Jiva. Whatever are reflected in Ajnana or Nescience is Ishvara. So pure consciousness is not limited by Nescience or not limited by intellect. When that is understood that it is not limited by Nescience or the products of Nescience such as intellect, pure consciousness alone remains. This is called as Pratibhimbavada. And then Madhusudan Saraswati takes us to Vachaspati Mishra. They are all great masters in Advaita. And then according to Vachaspati Mishra, pure consciousness, which is the content of Nescience, is Ishvara. Actually, ignorance also has a content. The content is only Ishvara. Because ignorance can survive only in pure Brahman. So then we will come to it much more in detail later. So the locus of Nescience is Jiva. So in this view of Vachaspati Mishra, the locus of ignorance is Jiva. So here multiplicity of Jivas are there because of multiplicity of Nescience. In a Tula Avidyas, here he brings about so many other things. So here he says, Ajnana Vishayi Bhutam Chaitanyam Ishvara, Ajnana Ashrayi Bhutam Cha Jiva. One who depends upon Ajnana is Jiva. One who has the Ajnana as its object, Upadhi, is Ishvara. So this is Avachedavada, according to Vachaspati Mishra, limitation here. And then it takes us into Drishti Srishtivada or Ekajivavada. Pure consciousness, which is the original, with Nescience as its limiting adjunct. Pure consciousness is original and it has got limiting adjunct, that is Nescience, that is Ishvara. Ajnana Upahitam Bimba Chaitanyam Ishvara, Ajnana Pratibimbitam Chaitanyam Jiva. Itiva Ajnana Upahitam Shuddha Chaitanyam Ishvara, Ajnana Upahitam Cha Jiva. So he says, pure consciousness, which is the original, which has the Ajnana and the limiting adjunct, is Ishvara. The reflection of pure consciousness in Ajnana is the Jiva. Ishvara means pure consciousness has the Upadhi, that is Ishvara. Reflection in Ajnana is Jiva. So he interprets it in another way also. Pure consciousness not limited by ignorance is Ishvara. Pure consciousness limited by ignorance is Jiva. Bound by ignorance is Jiva. So he gives various views and then also says, coming back to a very common level of example, the knowledge of the pot in the form, the pot is, we have the knowledge, the pot is, consists of few things. The knowledge of its form together with its existence. Existence of the object is there, the form also is there. And now the knowledge of that form along with its existence is there. Of these two, the knowledge of the form of the object and the existence of the object, two things are there. So, form of the object and existence of the object. Here he says, the existence part is real, form part is superimposed. Existence part is real, form part is superimposed. What is real? Is existence. The pot is, the pot exists. Existence is real. In the form of a pot, superimposed. Every means of knowledge becomes a valid means of knowledge only if it makes known a thing which was not known previously. What is called a valid means of knowledge? If what is not known previously is made known now, that which makes that known now is called as valid means of knowledge. So, meaning what was covered by ignorance, if it is removed, the ignorance is removed, that is called as a valid means of knowledge. An inert object is not known by itself. It cannot be known by itself. Only consciousness has to make it shine. So, inert object is described as not known only because the consciousness limited by the object is not known. See, Swami Chinmayananji also has given this nice definition-like statement, and we find this in Shastra and scriptures also, that what is an object? Any object, please understand this, any object in reality is the pure consciousness limited by that object. Any object in reality is the pure consciousness limited by the object. So when we see any form, that form is superimposed on consciousness. So that consciousness behind that form is limited by that form. Consciousness which is supporting that form is limited by that form. So that has to be understood very clearly. So it is said an inert object cannot shine by itself. It shines only because of the pure consciousness on which it is superimposed. If a pot has to appear as a pot, not only that the eye is necessary, the light is necessary, but the existence which makes the pot exist is necessary. The astitva of that pot, the asti of that pot, the existence, the easiness of that pot is necessary to make the pot shine or to make the pot appear as the pot. So what the ignorance covers, when we say that ignorance covers the worldly forms, what ignorance covers is not the object but underlying consciousness underneath the object on which this object is superimposed. So the knowledge of the object means, knowledge of the object according to this particular beautiful theory means knowledge of the consciousness underlying that object. Ignorance of the object means that object is not shining, object is not known to us because the consciousness underneath it is not known to us. That is very important. So the ignorance and the knowledge are the pure consciousness as the locus and as well as the content. So Brahma according to Advaita Vedanta, that knowledge which has for its object something that is not already known and is uncontradicted. Brahma according to Advaita Vedanta means that knowledge which has for its object something that is not already known and is uncontradicted. Earlier it is not known, now it is known, and it is not contradicted by other means. So that is called as Brahma. So the knowledge is very important in understanding about the relationship between Jiva and Ishvara, and finally understanding that both are one and the same. There was one person who went to a restaurant along with his pet dog, and there on the door of the restaurant it was written, bold notice was displayed, dogs not allowed. Dogs are not allowed. So he went inside along with his dog and went to the manager and said, "Sir, you please excuse me. There is nobody to take care of this dog and I am the only one right now. I have to get it along with me. So please excuse me. This dog has to be with me." And he started forcing. And then he said, "I am going to order, not only eat but order for half a dozen functions. Each function will be a couple of lakhs of rupees. So you please think well whether you have to follow the notice and not allow the dog or allow it." He said, "Really, sir? Yes. Don't worry. That notice is not for the dogs that have an owner. That notice is not for the dogs that have an owner. That is for the dogs that come without owner." So dogs read it. Dogs not allowed, they go away. He changed it because he has got some benefit. Naturally, immediately, so what is notice? What is there in notice? You saw half a dozen contracts, each a couple of lakhs, estimated what? That is all. Dog with the owner has got value. Mere dog has no value. Our Jiva with the connection of consciousness has got value. Otherwise it has no value. It is not enough. So that is very important. Once a passenger was traveling in a train. The ticket examiner came to check the ticket. And this passenger suddenly realized that he lost the ticket. Then he looked at the ticket examiner and said, "My dear ticket examiner, I am not a cheat. You look at my face and you will understand that I am a genuine person. Right now for this time, my face is my ticket. Please treat my face as my ticket." And the ticket examiner says, my dear passenger friend, I am bound by my duty to punch the tickets. What should I do now? Bound by my duty to punch the tickets. My face is my ticket. We need the validity to travel. Even for transmigration. Of course, vasanas, samskaras, karmas, everything will be there. But the validity for our travel is from the power of consciousness. Only from the power of the consciousness. And no one else and nothing else. That is very important. So we should give more importance to the power of consciousness. Otherwise, we will land up in more confusions. Two friends were discussing with each other. It is up to them to think whatever they want. It is only for the sake of fun we are knowing about it. So one man said, I don't take the trouble, my trouble from office to home. I don't take trouble from office to home. Because I don't want home to be troubled by the trouble of the office. There are so many people who take trouble from office to home. If there are trouble in the office, the whole home will be troubled that day. Because they show all irritation on the other people. The other man said, me too! Me too! I also don't take trouble from office to home because my trouble is a
Haya